All right, welcome everyone to Chat with a Grad, where we interview Bauman College graduates and they get to tell us about their wonderful culinary careers, culinary businesses, thoughts about food, all kinds of things that they want to talk about and we want to know from them. So we will have a Q&A session as well after, but today we are going to talk to the most wonderful soup maker from Bauman College. Her name is Nancy Chang, and she was the founder. She is the founder of Purpose and Hope, which is a small batch soup delivery service in the Bay Area of Northern California, where she has partnered with the Charlotte Maxwell Clinic and the Women's Cancer Resource Center to help nourish cancer patients in her community. And we just really love how she is making such a difference in the lives of so many people. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with everybody. I'm really excited to share my story and also, interact with everybody that's here. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Well, we're really excited to hear it as well. So you're a Bauman graduate, but an NC graduate, right? So you did the nutrition consulting program?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. The reason why I was inspired to go to Bauman College is my mom was diagnosed with cancer. And then food sharing through that experience, it just became a very meaningful, enriching experience that then I felt I wanted to go back towards. And then that's when I attended Bauman College and just learned about how broken our food system is and how serving people nourishing food is meaningful and empowering for both parties. So, yes,
And
that
so
was kind
that's
of my.
so your education there and at Bowman, and then you decided like what was it about soup and how did you start making soup that and this became something that you're very passionate about?
Oh, absolutely. So when I went to Bowman College, and I did the nutritional consulting program, to be honest with you, I took a lot of small business planning classes after Bowman College. But for me personally, I was really, really scared to start a business. And so I was working a corporate job at the time and then just stayed working there. And I just knew that in my heart, there was just this constant draw to go back to this idea that I had. But it really took me a long time to actually just re-emerge and say, like, this is something that actually really matters to me. It's really important. I think it's important to like live it out and give it a shot. And I had met this wonderful mentor who then suggested, if this is something that you'd like to do, why don't you go and, meet people that are doing kind of work along the lines that you find this vision around. And so at the time, one of the most transformative people that I had met was this oncology dietitian in the Bay Area. And she was incredible. She totally took me under her wing, and we talked about a lot of her clinical kind of discoveries through her practice. She had been in clinical dietitian for over 20 years at the time that we had met. And so we are talking about, if we were, because food can be such a personal experience for people, like if it was something that we wanted to serve people in this direction, what is a good starting point? And so we talked about how important it is for people to have access to traditional healing foods and how a lot of people that she had worked with felt better, had better outcomes, and a lot of really positive things around when they naturally had traditional food access as part of their dietary experience while they're going through treatments. And so the importance of things like bone broth and like mineral rich foods just became more of a highlight, and different types of phytonutrients and different ways to kind of fill in some of these nutritional gaps that are in the standard American diet. And so that's kind of how soups emerged, is because it's a pre-digested food. Basically, it's very easy to incorporate, put a lot of really good, valuable ingredients into it. You can create things that are really beautiful, dynamic, and, tasty for people to have when they sometimes feel like they're kind of having challenges in that area. Maybe they're, just having an experience where they're depending on insure or hospital foods, or maybe they don't know of any options that it could be easier. So then they kind of resort to things that maybe aren't going to be as helpful along certain parts of their journey. And so that's kind of how Soup emerged for my
I
business.
love that you went to, the dietary oncologist in your community, and you got real feedback from her about what is necessary, what is missing here, and just having that conversation, right? Because at the time, it wasn't necessarily, you weren't thinking soup immediately. You just kind of started to talk things out. And what is the thing I can share to help this particular community?
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I think for me, I'm a little bit more of an introvert. And so going into these spaces and talking to people, for me at the time, it felt really hard. But then, I think was a surprise to me is just how generous and open and how incredible people can be when you ask for help in a genuine manner. So I've been gifted with so many incredible people and help and advice and information, through being curious and being open to trying to discover ways to piece together my vision of helping people.
And so were you cold calling? Were you already in contact because you were working with your mother's health team? Like, how did you get out of that shell? I think that to me is so useful to know what other people's process is.
Oh, definitely. So, I did a lot of volunteering in my community. I did a lot of volunteering, and then I was also looking at organizations that were providing information towards the demographic that I was looking to serve. And so the person that I found, I actually met her through the cancer support community of Walnut Creek. I looked up, different kinds of workshops that were happening and just like went and attended and learned myself and picked up different information from different people. Or if I felt very inspired by somebody, just like asking them for that conversation. So at the time, it was all pre-COVID. It was very in person and things. And so it was just looking for things that were existing in my community and participating in them and learning how to have the courage to speak to people that were new to me. So that is kind of how all of that started.
And the timeline for that. So can you give us a little bit more insight into that? Like, was it you started going and within, weeks, or did it take a couple of years? Like, what was that timeline for you?
Um, when I started, like after my big gap of feeling afraid, and then meeting my mentor, and then going out and talking to people and taking a lot of small business planning classes and revisiting people, or participating in organizations and communities that are serving my ideal demographic. I mean, it took me a little while. Like for me, I'm just a little bit, I was conservative and I was scared about what that unfolding of a business would look like. So I took a lot of, like learning about how to operate a small business and all of these different factors, along with talking to people. I believe I probably started in 2018, like coming back into this space of being curious, talking to people, learning about all of these different variables that it takes to, even just start a small business. And then COVID happened. I did a deep dive into small business planning. And then in January of 2021 is when I launched my business. So for me, it took a while to kind of go through this ecosystem and kind of pick together the parts of my business that I felt would be a good representation of what I'd like to offer.
And so that's wonderful. So did you do a formal business plan and that all of those? Because we just have a lot of students that are just finishing up their business course, working on their business plans now.
Hmm.
Did
Yes,
you do a formal business plan? Yeah.
I did. Yes, because there's just, when you're starting your own business, there's just going to be a lot of different factors, that I think if you're a typical employee, you just won't really think about, and so I think it's important to kind of have an idea of what your service is, and then also kind of what your vision is. So then you kind of, when you're going through that process, then you've already thought about some of these things, because a lot of times all of the things that are required, it's very easy to get lost or intimidated by having to learn new things continuously to put together what you need to operate legitimately.
Did you have an elevator pitch? Were
I'm
you
sure at
or
certain points I've probably have gone through probably like a dozen different ways of describing my business in that form. But yes, I think it's
how
important to kind of be able to have a distilled way of sharing what your work is about or what your vision is, so people know how they can help you.
how would you do that today? How would you, what would the, what is your description, like your kind of description of your business?
The description of my business, I would say that I handcraft nourishing nutritional soups that are just a part of offering a point of healing and empowerment for people that I'm looking to serve. I don't know. You kind of caught me off guard. I apologize.
No, but see, that was perfect. I
Okay.
love that. So that just like I was like, oh, so who do you serve, right? So how are you finding your customers?
I have, I think for me, I started out with this vision of wanting to help people that were going through a health event. Something that I discovered is that, food is one of those things that is a universal love of all people. It's something that, you know, if you want it to be, it can be something that can continuously beautify your life. Um, and I've met a lot of different people that I wouldn't have expected to be serving and making food for. I have lots of people that gift friends that aren't feeling well, or people that have just come out of surgery, people that are new moms, or people that are health conscious, and just want to incorporate this into their practice of how they consume, the foods in their life. And so I've been surprised. The way that I first found my first wave of like a larger customer base was reaching out to hyperlocal publications in my area and sharing about my work. And then Berkeley side was the first place that wrote about my business. And then I had an explosion of people that I would never have been able to find otherwise, like have visibility of my service. And then amazing, kind, wonderful customers, people that had recovered from cancer, or just people that I would consider my neighbors, like lots of different people, that I would never have expected. And then, I think with a small business, especially when you start it from scratch, it's just, there's a lot of different experimentation that goes on as far as how to make yourself visible to your ideal demographic, and so there's the whole thing about SEO, your searchability online, or like the way that you engage with the organizations and the people in your community that you want to be poised to serve. And then also, there's also the part of, like for me, like right now, I find it hard to do outreach, but I work with somebody that helps me with that, and so we talk to lots of people that are part of like different cancer organizations, or doulas, or like acupuncturists, or like yoga studios, and just like there's just a whole array of ways to kind of reach out and find those people. But those are things that had happened along my journey that just helped me kind of stay focused on my target demographic, but then also being open to serving people part of that larger audience as well.
That's wonderful. And so now you are working with additional people on your staff, or is it really just you and someone doing outreach? Like how many people are involved in your business?
I've had a variety of different types of ebbs and flows in my business. And so, there was last year I had a large grant opportunity through one of the organizations that I've received small business support from. I think part of operating small business is always being resourceful, always finding ways to supplement yourself with help, like never to be an island. But, there's been certain points where, when I first started, I had another like culinary friend help me through a lot of my growth process. I've had um, like I've been granted funds to kind of work in like a food insecurity project, and then I've hired people to help me with that as well. The areas that I find challenging, like doing like the digital marketing or the outreach, you know what I mean? There's people that I've hired to kind of help fill in those gaps, because it's really hard to do it all yourself, and so there's just been a variety of people that have come and helped me, and then also recognizing where that threshold is to where you can do it on your own, to where you need people to support you.
Wonderful. So can we talk a little bit about the soup now?
Of course.
So what kind of soup are you making, and how are you getting it to people?
So when I was ideating the business, the thing that kind of makes my soup different is the base of it. So with all of the soups, it either comes with a foundation made of bone broth, either chicken or beef bone broth, or I also make a vegan mineral broth. So right now I offer 6 different soups with that variation. So you can either have it vegan or you can have it with a bone broth base. Whenever I was working on my menu, it was kind of offering like, you know, ingredients that are like valuable. Like there's somebody that I buy hand harvested seaweed from Sonoma County from for one of the soups, or like, I've, also sourced mushrooms from like local businesses here to kind of bring those ingredients in, or being mindful of different types of colors and phytonutrients, or also like, things that are like maybe people have digestive issues. So you want to offer something that has like, I have like 2 low FODMAP soups. And then also, offering things with like, anti-inflammatory food combinations and things kind of that nature.
Do you mind if I show your website and to see some of the
Yeah,
pictures of the
please do.
soups?
That would be
Okay.
great.
So you can see, what soup is this one here in the,
That's the broccoli soup. So I have a super green broccoli soup, and in the base, we have the, I add things like hemp seeds and nutritional yeast to, offer some nice protein and flavor in there. Excuse me. And so it's cooked with like kale, broccoli, onions, turmeric as well.
wow, these are lovely. Look at all the colors, right? I'm just like so visually appealing, all of these soups. Like you said, this one is the roasted cauliflower,
Mm-hmm.
and that with the beautiful golden yellows, you've got deep oranges, the greens, just so many colors. Do you have a most popular soup?
The miso and then the red beet soup, those are 2 that people often gravitate towards. I do have quite a bit of people that come in with digestive issues, and so oftentimes they'll purchase things like the kabocha squash and the tom kha.
Beautiful. The Tom Kha, I've got to click on that one. This is one of my favorite soups in the world to eat. Look at the mushrooms. Are you sourcing like these mushrooms? Where are you finding your food, your ingredients?
Yeah, so the mushrooms, I like to get them from Far West Fungi. I've created a relationship with them over the past couple years. And then, like there's certain ingredients like the tofu. I like to get that at Hodo Tofu, which is also an Oakland-based tofu company. And then they have practices where when they make their tofu, it increases the protein density. And so there's just like these little things that, when you're looking for where to get your food from, where do you find like those high quality ingredients that also support your local community?
They look really delicious. So are
You.
you selling them? So like, can I click on, is there something in particular like the care package you're delivering?
Yeah, with
It
my particular business, I've been so surprised by just how many people are buying nourishing food for the people that they care about as well. So a lot of times it's for people offering a gift to someone that they care about, and then this is kind of an expression of caring for them. So this I love, like whenever people buy for their friends, usually they'll leave a note and things like that. And in my small business, I've been so amazed by how much people share, really special stories about the reason why they're buying my soups. And it just increases the purposefulness and wanting to make something that, hopefully people will enjoy.
So you're bringing the soups directly to people's homes. Are they um, in glass and are they frozen? Like what is the transportation of the soups, the delivery like?
Oh, for sure. So, I always cook my soups fresh on Friday. And for me, what I do is I package them. I give them an option. I have an FDA food pouch that has a zipper, or people can have them sent in a mason jar. And then on Saturdays, I have this wonderful driver that comes, and then we pack everything up. I have my whole delivery list for him, and then he delivers for me on Saturdays. So I do my deliveries once a week.
And you're cooking and out of your home because in San Francisco, or you're in the Bay Area, you can get the Mykonos license to work out of your home. Are you doing that, or do you have a commercial space?
So when I first started my business, the Miko Micro Enterprise Home Kitchen operation, it was brand new. I was one of the first people to be permitted in that way because it was such a small business. And for me, it was an experiment. Because when I was afraid of doing my business from the past, it was because of that initial overhead cost and the maintenance, of paying for all of these different factors. And so being able to be permitted to produce in my home was the biggest gift for me, with my starting point in my small business. And then I also work with this organization locally called the Mandela Partners, and they've given me a lot of wonderful small business support. And then I currently use their kitchen, their commercial kitchen, in the East Bay as well.
Wonderful. Well, these are gorgeous and they're making me hungry. And I know that um, we actually used your services and bought these for a colleague of ours.
Mm-hmm.
And so she testified to the amazing taste and healing power that they had for her. So
So
it's
kind.
just such a wonderful, wonderful business. I want to turn it over to the audience now to see if there's any other questions.
Yes, Jared.
Yeah. Yeah, that was great. Thank you for sharing all of that. Um, but I was wondering a couple things. One, so you deliver them, do they all just are they all frozen or are they
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't answer that part of the question. So basically, I cook them fresh on Friday. I package them. I bring them down. So whenever I package them, they're brought down to temperature. They're cold. I package them, enclose them, and then I put them in the refrigerator. And then the next day when we deliver, we do it on ice. And so it's always held at a safe temperature.
Oh, nice. I see. And then they can decide how they store it when they get home, like freeze it if they want or eat it. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And then my other question, I'm kind of like you. I have a corporate job too, and I hate it, and I want to quit. But I was like, oh, I'm scared. But too late. I'm quitting. They already know, so the jig is up. But with that being said, any advice of like going out first, like leaving corporate America, and like any like advice for first, like any advice you'd go back and give yourself?
Yeah, I can resonate with that a lot. Um, Depending on what your plan is after you graduate, what your intention is as far as pivoting your work, for me, it's important to make sure that you're still aware of what your income stream is until you have that proof to kind of, make your larger vision your primary income source. So, you know, I understand how that feels, but there's also the stress of starting something new that requires a lot of attention and financial resources. And then to make sure that you are taking care of yourself instead of feeling extremely stressed to make something new, very successful, very fast. Because I think that we're kind of in this paradigm where exponential growth equals validity in your work. And that's not always the case, and so just to give yourself that grace to be a human being, to have a quality of life and to do the work that you want to, but just making sure that it's not all directly changed immediately, and then this is now needs to perform in a way for you to be able to maintain a previous lifestyle, because there's going to be a lot of things that are going to shift.
Right.
And then just not putting yourself in a position where you're become very vulnerable.
Yeah.
So that would be my advice, is just making sure that, it's not a complete like reliance on something that could be brand new and needs nurturing and time in order to get you where you want to be.
Totally. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Chef Melissa.
Great. Well, I'm currently like guiding some students through the business course, and they're thinking about how they're setting their prices for products. So I'm curious, like, just how that process was of how much you're factoring in, calculating out the food cost, doing market research, just kind of what that looked like for you to land on prices.
Yeah, so when I was setting up my pricing for my soups, what I was doing was I have like some software programs that I have where I have every single ingredient from every single supplier, and then breaking down what that cost is per item. And then for me, I try to like to shoot my cost of goods between 25 to like 35% on the high end. And that's where I came up with my pricing for my soups. And then, things like jars and things like that, it's like, your packaging is going to be part of your cost of goods. And so just making sure that, you're not setting yourself up in a position where you're not charging the correct amount for you to be able to pay your expenses. And if you have help and things like that, those are all, your ingredient costs. And if you have labor help and things like that, those are going to be a pretty big portion of that overall price cost consideration. And so that's what I used software to kind of help me organize, my exact cost per item.
Well, the students are, I know, I'm going, what software? What software are you using? Which one do you like?
The one that I use is called Parsley software. Yeah, and so that one, that's the one that I use, and that one I feel is really helpful. I can put in my recipes, I can put in my ingredients, where I buy them, the cost, those are things that may go up or down, you know what I mean? And so, and then also whenever I have my orders every week, because for my small business, people pre-order and then I'll deliver, so then there's less food waste. And then it breaks down my shopping list as well. So I just plug everything in, and then even when people make orders, I just say, this is the amount of cauliflower soup with bone broth I'm making. This is the amount of vegan miso soup I'm making. And then it just makes a nice shopping list for me. And then it just, it reduces the element of surprise. I use that to kind of go through my inventory and then see what I actually need. And then it just simplifies it for me. Yes?
Yeah, so you said that you have 6 soups on offer right now. Does that change? Do you have, recipe testing? Does that take a certain amount of time? I'm just curious how often you rotate, or if you've just kind of developed recipes that you stick with.
Right now, there's just so many recipes I would love to kind of evolve into. I feel my small business journey, it's been a lot of like me figuring it out. You know what I mean? And so, I would love to introduce new recipes and things like that. I think that's a very normal, healthy way to like operate like a healthy food-based business. Like for me right now, it's like that's a goal, is to kind of work through that. I have some ideas that I'd like to bring in as well, but I feel like for me, I work as well as operate my small business, and so I feel sometimes it's a little bit hard because there's a lot of things that kind of come attached with that in my perspective, but I think it's really important to do that. Yes.
Hello, thank you for sharing so much of your experience with us. I'm really curious to learn more, if you're open to sharing about your relationships with like different producers. I think you had mentioned mushrooms and seaweed. How was building those relationships like? And like, were there certain things that you were looking for as you were, starting all of that? I'd love to learn more.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I think it's just as it can be just as wonderful as finding people to like gather information from. Like whenever I've reached out to different vendors, it was either, having had interacted with their products before and sharing about what I wanted to do, and then having kind of their awareness of the purpose as to why I was reaching out. The seaweed vendor was this incredible woman that I actually met through like a coworker who was her student when she was going to Sonoma State, and so I met her that way and then built this really good relationship where, it's, like every couple of years I'll go out there and then I go and harvest seaweed with them. And it's like this really wonderful experience. I was aware of Far West Fungi when I was working for a different food business, and they were a vendor that was like in the Ferry building, and we were selling salads outside and like meeting them that way. There's been people like, there's just, yeah, and like a lot of the produce, through working with the Mandela Partners, they actually have a produce distribution where they source their produce through small POC farmers that are within like I think they said like a 200-mile radius of the Bay Area, and so, yeah, I think it's kind of part of it is just kind of being aware that there's a great product that I'd like to incorporate, like Hodo tofu, for example. I've had their products before. I think they're really wonderful. I think they make a good product, and it's just like reaching out and sharing with them, like, this is a business that I produce. I'd love to source from you. Is there like a way that I can build like a personal relationship to have that exchange? And just like, kind of whatever it is that you want to create. I mean, think about those components that you need and who's the business that you feel inspires you the most or makes you feel like the most excited about, and just share with them. My intention of my business is this. Would you be willing to, recognize me as a person, and like, we can have this exchange, so that's kind of how I found my vendors initially, and they've been wonderful people, and I respect their work, and I love that there's like this mutual caretaking. Does that answer your question? Okay, thank you.
I just love, there's so much, what you just were expressing is so genuine, right? And I can feel it through the computer and the interface here, and I'm sure the people you're talking with can also feel it. And so is that one of the pillars you have with your values? Because we do talk about, values in business. Is that something that you have ever struggled with?
Me personally, I am kind of a shy person. I think kind of getting over those humps, that's been a huge learning and a benefit through this experience, was just learning how to show up and then like humanize the connection. I think that, sometimes we tend to kind of forget that that's an option. You know what I mean? Because I feel like, we kind of are in our lives and we just kind of do this process. But it's just incredible, I think just going from a place where you're just authentically sharing without expectation, you know what I mean? And sometimes you just get this really wonderful kind of reciprocal connection, And so I think that's where I've been very lucky is learning how to get over my own sense of limitation and then just being open and then, letting people know, like, I admire what you do and I'd like to see if there's a way that we can connect over whatever it is, and a lot of times you just really get surprised by how kind and wonderful people can be and how willing they are to help. And I've been able to get great pricing, you know what I mean? Really good, like just sourcing through people from just being like, this is me, this is what I'm trying to do. And can I connect with you over this? And it's amazing that people sometimes will surprise you and just how amazing that they will be in response to that. And I think part of it is just coming with the intention of just being a human being, like totally imperfect, but with a desire to do something that's positive. And I think people resonate with that and want to support it.
Well, Jen Tobin.
Yeah, I was just curious if you ship your soups or if it's just local only right now.
I have had that question come up a lot, and I've had a lot of people reach out to me because a little while ago, I had a TV segment made about my small business. What I didn't realize at the time was that they're actually going to broadcast that nationally and stuff. And so I had a lot of people reach out and be like, oh, I'm in Virginia, I'm in Florida, I'm in like all these places that are very far from where we live here. And due to the nature of my particular product, it's perishable. It needs to be held cold, and then also it needs to be received quickly, and it's also heavy. What I've found is that even with like a discounted shipping rate, it typically exceeded the cost of my product itself and stuff. And so I've had limitations in that area, but depending on maybe the scale or what the product type is that you have in mind, it may be different. You know what I mean? So for me, I've just been a little bit more like, I'm okay with being a small business, for my area. And then if there is that potentiality for it to grow or for there to be like a different type of shipping availability, that would be something I would be willing to do, just because, it can be very expensive to ship something, and it needs to be basically like an overnight, for me, kind of a situation. And then, there's like dry ice, there needs to be the packaging, and all of these different elements that really increase quickly. So currently I do local deliveries because of that reason.
Got it. Thank you.
Of course.
But what a great way to find out that you could really be a franchise and like really get some buzz growing. Because truly, like if you have clients and let's just say like if you have people from a national spot and you think about like who's asking the most, is it all from Florida? Then it's like, oh, well, who in your community of like holistic chefs could actually do something like you under your guidance? Because honestly, like people, it's such a brilliant business model. And I think the idea of it not being frozen is even better. And I think people who are really into this, there's going to be like, oh, like you don't want it frozen. You want it to be that local. And man, you could really be the master of all of it because you could just, I mean, you could have relationships with farmers all over the country. They grow things everywhere. I believe in you. I love it. It's such a great idea.
Thank you so much. And it's just one of those things too, where it's like, the desire for health, especially when you're working to regain that level of when you felt good, that's just something that I feel like everybody can relate to, and so just to be able to serve people when they feel like the most lonely in that journey, I feel like it can be a very uplifting experience. It makes it extra meaningful for me when people share that about, when they order. And so thank you so much for that reflection. I would love for, foods that just actually nourish people just to be so much more accessible than it is now, because we're really driven by like shelf life and fast flavors, and then a lot of times, we live that out, and then down the line, we're just kind of like, oh, hey, there's something kind of, there's a little bit of a deficit here, you know, and yeah, if we can prevent that from even happening, I mean, that would just be the most wonderful outcome of people having this education, is to make that kind of higher level impact.
Well, and Jared kind of opened the door to my next question as to what you see the future being for you, Nancy, because I think I met you almost 4 years ago now, and just to have seen the growth from when in these last 4 years, I feel like there's been a phenomenal change, right? You were the way you're presenting, you seem very confident, right? You're speaking so well about your business. Not that you weren't doing that before, but there's been a growth. So, and it's incredible to see that. And your website has also changed and evolved and grown. What do you see as the next step for you?
Thank you. You know, I think a lot of times we go into an idea and it's just this, you know, it's like this very big picture of what your ideas are, and then it feels very, you know, it's like it's an unverified version of what you think it's going to be. You know what I mean? And then you start, and then, you know, you learn a lot of things. Sometimes, like, you get a little bit more here, or you thought something was going to be very big and it turns out to be something that wasn't as large as you were anticipating. You know what I mean? So there's been a lot of learning and fluidity and things like that. You know, I don't have the vision of wanting to be in grocery stores. For me, I find it really, I love being able to kind of still have that like intentionality of like what my service is about. And so right now, for me, like, I'm doing like targeted outreach in the areas that I find would be a good fit for my service. You know, so I'm not sure what that looks like. It's, you know, but it's just being able to have that person to person kind of understanding that we're like wanting to be in a holistic environment together and incorporating food as part of that healing process. Like, that to me is important. That's kind of like where my marketing and my advertising and like my presence is kind of that's kind of more my focus, is being able to be part of an ecosystem with other services and businesses that like are a part of my target demographics, like care team. That to me is where I feel the value, you know, so it's a little bit of an experimentation and staying in my desired area. So that's kind of where I'm looking to grow. So it's a little bit more grassroots, you know what I mean? But it's just where I find the magic for me and my energy, going in a space where it feels like this is the kind of food and these are the kind of people that make me feel like my business's purpose is being kind of disseminated.
That's wonderful. And I'm going to drop your link to in here. So, and the business name, it again is Purpose and Hope. And so that
if anybody ever wants to connect to, you know, it's like love people, and, you know, if anything is like supportive as far as like conversationally or just question wise, just please feel free to reach out. I love connecting with people.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have a closing question? We're good. You're very thorough. I feel nourished. This conversation was nourishing for me. I really appreciate your time, sharing your story with us, sharing the business insight as well. I think is so beneficial to our students who have similar interests and similar aspirations. So thank you so much, Nancy. I hope you come back and talk to us whenever you want. So I'll reach out as well to us.
Thank you. Yeah, please feel free to reach out anytime. I'm always so happy to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you again. Don't forget to check out purposeandhope.com and see what Nancy is up to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you, Nancy.